My name is Danelle Noonan, and I am a licensed therapist. I, much like all of you guys, have worked from home quite a bit more this year. Well, more than I ever have, 100% more than I ever have before. But I would say about 30% of my work is now done from home, just via video. I can do therapy still. And I also do something called neurofeedback. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's basically a way of retraining brainwave activity to normalize. And so it's a form of biofeedback, but specific to brainwaves. So I really focus on insomnia, anxiety, and attention and focus issues.
Well,
That's
boy,
kind of
we need you these days with all the.
I know. Everybody's got at least one of those for the most part, it seems like. So, and then I also do quite a lot of work on divorce recovery and relationship dynamics. So those are kind of my sweet spots, if you will. And so today I'm going to do a lot of speaking on productivity and focus. And I'm going to gear that toward how to improve those while we are working from home. So, there's a couple of keys that I want to talk about in terms of productivity. And I think if we can just for a second, set aside the component of lack of interaction with other people, that's a huge one that I think has a tremendous impact. And obviously, that's not something I can necessarily fix. We can address that, but I want to kind of focus on how do we do the things that we know to do individually. So the first thing that I encourage everybody to do when it comes to working from home is to establish a normal daily routine. It's a lot harder to do that when you can, look, I'll be honest, I was guilty of, not that there's a bad thing about this, but I would be doing therapy in my slippers. And, my point in that is finding some normalcy and routine can be a challenge when there's nothing necessarily pushing you to do that. And so I think finding out what your new normal looks like in light of what your schedule and routine is now is really important. Our brains thrive on consistency and normalcy and predictability and what's called homeostasis. And that is really the ability to maintain internal stability regardless of external environmental changes. And so what that boils down to is establishing some type of daily routine. And I don't think that requires necessarily, okay, at 6:28 I wake up and eat an egg, and then at 6:45 I do such and such. I mean, it doesn't have to be exact time frames because we do have a looser schedule right now, but having a routine to your day is really important. The second thing that I recommend for increasing productivity is to be very, very clear on what your expectations are. And I think not just for yourself, but also for others. A lot of us are still managing other people and having to try to juggle a bunch of things remotely, and that's a challenge. So being very clear on what your expectations are is going to help both you and the person or people that you're trying to manage. So the question is, have you actually sat down and taken the time to evaluate what that looks like for you now? Because it's different most likely than what it was last year. And if you have done that, then the next question is, are those expectations realistic? Typically what we do is we back our way into them, meaning we do know when our expectations are not met very clearly, right? But we may not clearly be able to define what they are to begin with. And so I want to encourage you to spend time to define them on the front end instead of waiting until they aren't met. And then you're like, well, shoot, there's another one we didn't hit that target. Anyway, those are two ways to help yourself in terms of productivity, is to establish a daily routine. And then secondly, to clearly define your expectations for yourself and for those around you. Okay. Now I want to talk about beyond that. Let's talk about focus. And this is one that I really love talking about. So you guys are familiar with the concept of multitasking, right? And I think a lot of us have prided ourselves in being excellent at multitasking through the years. And here's something that I have found really interesting in all of my research on brain function and just the dynamics of human thinking and all that kind of stuff. I came across a scientific study, neuroscience study, that tells us that we literally cannot do more than one thing at a time mentally. So what actually happens is when we're focused on one thing and something else comes along and we're trying to kind of do 2 or 3 things at one time, your brain is actually stopping this activity, starting this activity, stopping this activity, starting this activity. And it may feel somewhat fluid because we're good at, managing a lot of things. But that's actually, that process is called neural network switching. And it's literally like switching from this network to this network to this network. And study after study has shown that neural network switching is actually associated with a major decline in accuracy of whatever tasks you're trying to accomplish. So when we talk about focus, really what I want to encourage is harnessing the power of your brain to your advantage rather than allowing it to hinder you. And so when we talk about that, there's, like I said, been so many studies done that that demonstrate that multitasking is not an actual thing. But the other issue is there are so many things that are vying for our attention all day long, especially in today's society. I mean, I don't even know. Here's my phone. These little babies are, they are a blessing and a curse because you're 24/7 now available. And that did not used to be the case. And I think for all of us, that can, no matter how much we try to focus on something, it can be a stimuli overload, right? I know this is particularly difficult when there's blurry lines between home life and work life. And so creating that definitive line is something that I think goes back to setting a routine to where you have a clearly defined chunk of time that you're working and then a clearly defined chunk of time that you're not, and work is not going to interfere with home life. That's, again, it's hard because those lines become very blurry when home and work are all together in one place.